Right. Good evening, everybody. And this is sort of a casual, impromptu stream where I was going to say I promised it would be what was it 9:30, but I thought I'll go a bit early. Got a bit of spare time. Thought why not? Because I get tired with these things. When late in the evening. For people outside the UK, I usually do my streams about 9, half 9, and as I say, I just get tired. So yeah, recently on my channel, um, I've been doing content which is relating to Richard Hilton, mysterious death of the British Empire. I haven't really talked about current affairs for a bit, usually because let's see, number one, there are so many other channels cover current affairs, so it's oversaturation. But of course, my channel was founded back in 2020, around the time of COVID, where you had the convergence of COVID lockdowns and Black Lives Matter rioting. And it's quite funny because that sort of feeling has come back into Britain recently, in people's behavior and responses. And so I thought it'd be quite appropriate to relive the glory days of 2020. um, so yeah, tonight I'm going to be talking about a very British hypernormalisation. The thumbnail is from a video game, I believe. That's I typed in British dystopian fanfic, and it came up with this image of a policeman with a smiley face. I think it's called We Happy Few. Looking into it, and there's that people are forced to take like drugs that make them happy and smile, even when everything is crumbling and there's something not right. um yes, it's yeah, we happy feel, yeah. I thought it was quite fitting, because let's be honest, the average liberal or the average journo and Labour MP in this country would um they would probably look at that game and think, probably think it's the most ideal form of Britain. Everyone's happy. But there's something quite prescient with that concept, because we're talking about hyper normalization, and this is something. This is a title. This is sort of a copy, if I'm absolutely honest, from a Adam Curtis documentary, also titled Hyper Normalization. And if anyone hasn't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a very, very good um, three-parter documentary. It's it covers areas of New Labour, of narratives, and at its time there were some mixed reviews. I mean, some like the Guardian and Usual, because this is back in, I think it was 2007, 2009-ish. So the world was a bit different back then in that regard. And um, I find that you did see more leeway with the establishment left. And it's quite interesting because, as we've seen with Adam Curtis documentaries, he really went actually quite deep with inside, um, looking at the system to a level which I'm surprised was even allowed, especially on mainstream BBC. Um, given given the behaviors that we see today from the same organizations, and how protective they are of their methods and control over narratives. But I mean, I would say back then it was, it anything dissident outside the liberal framework was, I mean, apart from Jonathan Bowden and his followers in the pub, it wasn't, it, there wasn't anything of note. And again, social media at that time was still in its infancy. I think Facebook had just been created. You still had like MySpace. I see. I remember that time, MySpace and everything. You didn't have the, instant communication. that we see today, and that's been, you know, playing an important role in what's happened with Britain over the last few days. But we've got a few people here first. Hello, uh, Effie Hart. Hello, Swing of Fire, North Sea. Oh, my bit's a bit slow today. North Sea and Sebeski rises. Musk calling out to Tir Keir. Yeah, and that catchphrase is going to be a problem for him, because it's um a complete hello Australian. That catchphrase is going to cause trouble for him in the long run. Fe is short for iron. Ah, I see. Uh-huh. Well, Ironheart. Welcome, Ironheart. Yeah, Musk. You know, this is going to be interesting, especially what we'll see tomorrow. And looking today on hypernormalization. So I'll just give you the overview of the episode in question, that I'll be referencing here, because it it does, you know, it is interesting to look at. At this time, just before, okay, so I just update, it was 2016, so it must have been just about one of the last documentaries, I think, because I know Adam Curtis went a bit, you know, Trump derangement and everything, and so this was the last time that you had I guess, anything of value. Can't get you out of my head. I mean, that came out I haven't seen that one. That might be a better one. I just seen interviews with Curtis since then, talking about, you know, on unusual, like geopolitics and other left wing sites. So um, he also did a TV show recently about a uprising in Port Talbot. Um, I haven't seen that yet, but it'd be interesting to see how how that would pan out. So, so Hypernormalization is a 2016 documentary by Adam Curtis. It argues that governments, finances, and technological utopians have since the 1970s given up on trying to model the complex real world, and instead established a simplified fake world for the benefit of corporations, and kept stable by neoliberal governments around the world. And that's sort of the theme of what we're looking at here today, because in the documentary he sort of demonstrates how that plays out. And if you look at the world of 97, um, um, if you look at the world from in Britain in particular, from 97 and New Labour, and what we have today, you know, we have a system in place where um, the concept of a native Brit or Englishman as a ethnic identity, and we've seen this today with Conor Tomlinson. A clip on GB News been going around debating some former Labour MP and Labour Party advisor, where you have this total, um, you know, liberal lie that's been accepted as a truth, and has in many people, and I've seen this in my lifetime, um, that propagate this belief that the English and the Scottish and the Welsh and the Irish ethnicity doesn't exist. They'll usually fall into um, talking points that, you know, we're a mix of Roman, Greek, and, you know, all this sort of nonsense. And so, because we are a mix of all these different invaders, that this somehow justifies mass third world immigration. And this is a justification. This is sort of this reality, and it's been played out. And you see this recently, because ever since 2014, 2015, you'll notice in any historical TV shows or documentaries, they have started, putting in black characters in like say 14th, 15th century England. Of course, when there were no black people, and we've also seen like supposed historical articles trying to race swap the remains of um, Roman Britons, or those living in Britain who had non Romano-Celtic DNA, and passing them off as African. The ebony bracelet lady in Eastern England was, because she had an ebony bracelet. The claim was that she was an African. I think later on it was revised by a local paper that actually she had the genetic makeup of someone born in um, Anatolia, Cyprus, that sort of region, which would make sense because it fell within the boundaries of the Roman Empire at that time. And so that's been played out today. There's total denial, but there's never a total denial for Arabs or Persians or Turkic people, or any sort of Asiatic group that exists in this country. And so we're seeing this sort of we're seeing this play out in real time, where a narrative is actually being undermined, and the liberal mind, like with cannot really uh, cannot really compute this, especially when those who are undermining it are using tactics which many people, I think, on the left, and I will state this, there are theories out there saying that this was all orchestrated by the government or MI6 or whoever. I don't think this was the case. I think what we've seen, the violence that we've seen in the last few days, has been totally organic. I mean, I don't think there's any real leadership to it. I also think on a scale it's been heavily overblown on pure numbers level. I think it is more probably localized. I do think though that it has increased in scale, mainly due to the behaviours of our Prime Minister and the Labour government, and their heating up tensions deliberately, being completely confrontational with British people in the north who have concerns about what's been going on, and then not just about the stabbings, but there is also the long legacy. And I was watching this debate with saw a clip of Callum, from who used to be at the Lotus Eaters, with Destiny, and trying to get through, because a lot of these American commentators are doing sort of like your big brain, but he's Rwandan, he's Christian, what's this got to do with Muslims? And talk about the actual long legacy of grooming gangs, gang-like tactics with that teacher or that disabled kid who supposedly desecrated a Quran or what have you. So there's a long list of grievances that have gone on. Nothing's really been done about it, and I think what's happened is this has blown a lid. And I think the behaviour of the government and certain people, and people within the media, left-wing and media, have deliberately have inflamed the situation, and need to calm things down. And I agree with people calling for calm, because this is getting to a stage where there are fanatics, left-wing fanatics, who are calling for the destruction of this country, and those left-wing fanatics are in government, and they must be, they must be told, they must be shown that this is not acceptable behaviour. So we've got a few more people joined. Lukey World, hello there. How fares your side of the Shire? Well, there are strange riders, black riders, been coming up and down my road recently, looking for the looking for the sensor for the what would it be? Not the wrong ring, the sensible centre. Um, Unnamed podcast. As a native Briton fighting for Britain, we have more in common than native Arabs, native Africans, native America. Yeah, I mean we do. We have. Is what you have sense of community as well. A sorry named unnamed podcast, but I cannot share the the other comments on screen, and I totally disavow. I love the nation of Israel, and I disavow any any anything that goes against that. Australian. I bought John Seeley's expansion book for $70. Good stuff to read. Um, I don't know. Let me know how you find it. And Lucy World, Murd Court Trumpeter. So that's referencing Henry VIII's trumpeter, who was this black trumpeter, and is heavily referenced by many liberals and left-wing types today. And I mean, as Starkey pointed out, we know very little about him. We know that his payments, um, uh, we know that he got paid, that he got a regular salary and lodgings, but that's about it. There's nothing of note. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, because he was probably in the court trumpeter because he was kind of an exotic, figure. Like how a king would show off like a polar bear. That Norwegian king who had like a polar bear as a, I don't want to say like a pet, but it kind of was. Anyway, Mitch is in the chat. It is something how they double down and just saw it in the public, realize how bad two-tiered police are and how privileged Muslims are, as well as, of course, anti-white institutions. I mean, yeah, that is the perception that is viewed. And so, getting on into hyper, normalization. First, we're going to talk about the liberal beliefs. So, as I stated, the fact that English ethnic identity doesn't exist, but they also have, and I've been sort of going through normie Facebook, normie, social, like TikTok and Snapchat and all those, degenerate apps. And what's interesting is that there's this, this New Britain perspective, this post 97 perspective that, and I think this usually comes from, I think this was a theory put out by many TV shows and soaps at the time. And then there's this idea that the brutish white thug who is extremely racist, actually has to rely, he likes his curry, he relies on the NHS, he relies on all these local services, which are 100%, remember, this is their own worldview, operated by migrants who aren't from this country, or ethnic foreigners, however you want to frame it. And so you have the usual, oh yes, you want these out, but who's going to serve you your curry? Who's going to sweep up the streets at this time? And the reality is, where I live and where many people live, well, first of all, you have the broad generalization, which is accepted as truth, that all the low-level jobs are dominated by migrants, which is not true. Like where I live, the bin collectors, the council street sweepers are dominated by actual British people. Okay, you have a few, but the majority still are British, by and large. And the idea that everybody, everybody goes to a sushi or curry house every night. I doubt that's true up in the Midlands or North. I don't know. I'll ask Mitch, but I doubt that's true. I mean, like the pub, for example. I mean, I would assume. I mean, because that's something that a lot of them, when they go on their tirade, which they say the same thing, and this is where you have a sort of hypernormalization, that in their mind, there's the dynamic is always there is this hardworking immigrant, and then there's this brutish thug who wants to bring them down, and is too stupid to realize it would harm him more if doing so. That's the sort of way that these people think. And that's something, I mean, I was was sort of pushed upon you when you were in school and everything, and in growing up in Blair's Britain, that was something that was a seen as accepted truth. I never really bought into it. Um, yeah, and this is the thing is, and this is what you're right, Swing Fire, because we all know this hypernormalization um, is effectively what Anne Curtis was getting at was, if you want to look at it in that sense, was sort of a 1984 style explanation of how power and how the system of power works. So, in 1984, Winston, he would on the Bureau of Information, he would be changing stories, he will be censoring stories, but effectively, what you have is you have a people in that story, which is meant to be Britain, um, representing Britain and the British people, who at a whim can change. The people can change. Um, you can change the narrative easily. So, like, once we've always been at war with Oceania. No, they've been our greatest ally, and that's something you see today. So, I mean, the most obvious example that you can find is a few years ago. You'll see all these scummy accounts like Paul Mason, that weasel worm that was on GB News earlier with Connor Tomlinson, would argue in 2020 with BLM that the riots were the voices of the unheard. This was about justice. This was about showing that solidarity. The usual crap that they would propagate, and also showing that this is about stand to racism, and that the police, but fundamentally at its core, it was all cops are bastards. Remember ACAB, all cops are bastards, and it was very much an anti-copper style of protest, even in the UK, mainly aimed at the Met. But today, those same people are being the biggest defenders of the police because it works for them. And this is, I mean, I know this sounds simple, but this is Smithian 101. But my point is, these people and the British people aren't thinking in terms of the power dynamics here, like Smithian power dynamics, because they don't think. I mean, that sort of way of thinking is reserved for those for those in power. For those in the civil service and the British deep state and all that. What what these people are, they're basically recipients of what the power node says next. What Big Brother says next in that regard. And you know, I I think, well, I know that, as we've seen with COVID, is the masses are easily susceptible to change a narrative, like especially when it's a complete 180 turn. So herd immunity is the way to go. No, it's actually lockdown. Herd immunity is a dangerous extremist suggestion. You see, that is one. This is one example we're giving here, right? Um, and what you have is you have the and one of the worst things I hate about COVID was you had this endless debate between uh I guess some ardent COVID skeptics and then the absolute nutters who were in favor of like 15 jabs every weekend. Is you had this denigration and this conversation that denigrated into pointless mathematical statistical arguments. And what you had is both sides reforged this fake this reality, which was formed on fake foundations of a fake reality, where because it was fake, every day it could change organically. It could just change on a whim because it wasn't real, and it was easily um it could easily be undermined, which it did happen in the long run. And there's several layers to this sort of way that's been in place. And as on this channel, I believe that um I'm not liberal minded. And so I believe the whole foundations of liberal society is a fundamental lie that goes against all aspects of human nature. And one of that is effectively people do think in group terms, and I think that has been demonstrated recently. um, and it's an animating principle, no matter how you see it. But the problem is, the narrative itself in that regard is collapsing. Even if it doesn't achieve anything for us, it doesn't, and it probably won't. And when I say it's collapsing, I don't mean there's going to be some change coming from this. All it means is that you're just going to have this, and this is what Adam Curtis, what he has this obsession or with late stage Soviet Union, and with the Soviet Union, this is where the term hypernormalization comes from. It was, and I can't remember the name. It was a Russian writer who, um, a Russian writer who, I think he wrote. Let me hold. I think it was something to do with Stalker. You've all heard of that game, Stalker? Hold on a sec. Oh, hold on. Andrei Tversky, that's it. Andrei Tversky. It was Roadside Picnic. There was a Soviet film of that as well. It's actually it's based on the book Roadside Picnic, and that is authors are Arkady and Boris Stragarsky, and there was a film based on it called um, Stalker. And what this is about is that they go into this zone, this sort of like, it's quite post-apocalyptic. They go into this zone where um, in the book, the stalkers are people who trespass into a forbidden area known as the zone and steal its valuable extraterrestrial artifacts, which stalkers sell. Uh, um, and what happens is the experience in these zones can be change in from the perception of those present. And Anne Curtis likes to use the clips of the film in sort of explaining the end stage of the Soviet Union, where everybody is in this zone of this sort of foundational lie, where the ruling government sort of gave up on the lie, like we have today. The concept of liberal democracy, of fairness and equality. I mean, it's completely gone out the window. You just need to look at any Labour MP's tweet, or any, not just Labour, but Conservative, or any tweet that they just want to exercise hard power. Even as I speak now, Paul Mason has tweeted out, wanting um, online bill to clamp down on channels like this. Bearing in mind, the safety bill was actually put forward in Britain as a way to stop children seeing content which would lead to them committing suicide, online bullying and stuff. But as it's been pointed out by many, that it was actually a tool to um, to go after political opponents. So yeah, I mean, in that regard, you had this bizarre system where the masses didn't believe the propaganda. The elites didn't care about that the propaganda wasn't being believed, but the masses, because, and this is the thing, people need reassurance. They can't live in a system where they without taking action. They can't live in a system where they're um, where everything is where the lie is obvious to a level that they um um it, it doesn't impede on their lives. So what happens is, Adam points out, is that many people readapted. So they just became even more emboldened, not in the sense of an ideological commitment in its totality, but they became effectively mental in believing this this lie, hence hypernormalization, because they just became so um it's a strange detachment of reality where in many ways it does supersede reality and it becomes reality in itself. um and so I think, we're sort of getting to that stage where many people have become so detached now that we're seeing banded the term terrorists being banded around. We're seeing the term um, you know uh, import expediting people on online. Maybe if it's Ian Chong Lee or people who lives on TikTok, maybe I wouldn't be so upset. But I wouldn't be upset about it. But you're seeing behavior which is um, insane. It's not what a rational government would do, and um, going back to Blair and Blair politics here. What the thing that he said is that you have to know when to tell your radicals no. You have to put your radicals away. And Starmer has unleashed his radicals. He's totally unleashed them, and it has, you know, uh, well, I mean, the opinion polling itself gives it its own clue of what's happened and what people think. Um, it's one of the reasons he doesn't want to call back Parliament, you see, because he still thinks he can redetermine, he can sort of get the narrative back on track if he distracts. It's too late for that. He had about a day after the initial troubles to rectify this, but he decided to up the ante in two or three speeches. And also the obvious one, which as people mentioned earlier, that in Birmingham Yardley, in Burnley and other places, there have been mobs of Muslims who, again, going back to the hyper-normalized reality. I mean, they're just the innocent, party who cannot, who are just protecting themselves. They're the innocent party who are protecting themselves from violent outsiders. By doing that to protect themselves, they go down to a local pub and start attacking women and children, because women and children in a pub are their greatest threat, and the greatest threat to Labour Party. Women and children. I think there is something in the British in British mentality, in the sort of DNA, that is more susceptible to this way of thinking, or more susceptible to um, this sort of authoritarian. I mean, I don't want to come across as a bit of a libertarian or anything like that. The saying is that there's more susceptibility to a uniting sort of a authoritarian narrative to things, to that can determine um, how they're able to determine how people think, especially within liberals. I mean, you've had many of these people calling for the army to be called on the street, um, which in on itself would probably, again, not help things. Who knows? As I say, we're sort of in an uncharted territory at the moment. Um, I still think there should be a climb down from all of this, but who knows? Oh, here we go. Got a new question. Do you think the army would comply? Um, yeah, I think they would. I mean, the reality is, and this is something that you know, um, again, you have to be careful how I word this, but in the Russian Revolution, within um, you know, within institutions within Russia, post offices, infrastructure institutions, you had the presence and the local union power of a very, very organized group, especially the Bolsheviks, and especially the Bolsheviks within the naval, in St. Petersburg within the navy as well. So in that regard, if you look at that comparison, um, there was um, no it was easy for them to side and for the Bolsheviks to win, because of course they were, at the time you had many factions within this in Russia, and they were the most organized over the Mensheviks and liberal. I mean liberals always get script effed over because they're just incompetent buffoons who don't understand power. Um, in the UK's example, when the dialectic is that these people are terrorists who are trying to ruin this country, and there's plenty of I mean, there was a TV show about this armed police officer, and I remember there was one season where, you know, there there was this uh there was this storyline of this far right terror plot. So one could argue that we've sort of been conditioned for narratives, and also like in on was it a year ago, like it was Coronation Street, where you had this uh started off as like an anti-vaccine, and then like right-wing cult that tried to take over. And I think even like, what was it, Hollyoaks, the radicalized incel thing, all of this has been put into the public conscious, so people have already been primed to fear the domestic terrorist angle. And I think that's how, if the army were called onto the street, I think I majority of people would conform, including many of you watching. Most of you would conform because and probably me. Um, I mean, I would depending on I mean, if Starmer goes full Stalinist mode, then there will be no more streams. There will be no more conversations or analysis on this, because you would be put in the gulag, the Yvette Cooper gulag that she's creating. Anthony B, who controls the world? Well, actually, no, it's a good question, because it does. This is one of the things that is that the theory we've been putting around in our circles, that the elite need to unite morally and psychologically and physiologically the country together in preparation for war, which is something um, I think is still on the table. But I think also for more practical reasons, they need to put the woke away to unite, to, as they say, to get the white boys to die in foreign conflicts. They need to have that unity now, at the moment. And what Starmer has done is he's sort of gone off script from what Blair and friends want. And so there is this, as I've said on Nine Juice channel many times, I do think within the governing global elite that there is actually factions are in a current, maybe even say civil war between how they want to carry on this, between technocrats, the George Soros types, and open borders types, and neocons. They all have different ways of how the world should be how we should be governed, and they're sort of fighting over that future. I mean, any idea that wokeness is going to be put away anytime soon, UK, I think has sort of gone by the wayside. Bearing in mind he campaigned on this, and I do um I do think that it was, you know, I'm not going to say I was wrong on this, because the way that he campaigned, it was, you know, putting radicals away, putting the wokeness away, and now he's done a complete U-turn. And bearing in mind, you know, even though he got 410 seats or whatever it was on the 36%. You know, he didn't necessarily win. It was just a lot of Conservative voters went to Reform. So his position, he's not entirely legitimate in that regard. Do you think some people suggested that the riots have resulted in a racial consciousness for native British? Do you think that's true? Um, I think one of the things liberals have suppressed in modern Britain is, well, I mean, we talk about the identity, but also that that there's any sort of fight left, you know. And we've seen violent ethnic mobs in recent years, and there's been this whole one of the things is you see in the 2005 2010s, one of the things they loved was the rehabilitated, you know, chav, or the really rehabilitated football hooligan. um you know, the death of the BNP, Farage coming on the scene, you know, civic nationalism, stuff like that. That was tolerated, you know, even though more radicals didn't, the radical lefts didn't like it, but it was tolerated because it was better than what came before. And of course, Farage is, you know, very keen to remind everyone that he was the one that brought down the BNP, even though that not true at all. As we know, there was more things going on in the background there. But um, I think now, I think it's always been there. Um, I think what I think one of the problems you've got, and I'll try and word this as carefully as possible, is a few in recent months we've seen on international news stories, which, I mean, remember, international news has dominated Britain, particularly around the Israel-Gaza conflict, right? And largely the British establishment has been, I mean, it's been a bit split, but it has been on the side of Israel. And in response to attacks by Hamas, Israel has effectively bombed Gaza to the ground. Um, and, you know, unlike in terror attacks in this country, where we were subjected to "Don't Look Back" in anger, and, you know, Blur and Oasis, you know, concerts and all that sort of stuff, Israel went, you know, hell for leather. Maybe, you know, to an extreme level, and nothing. You know, effectively, they were given a green light by, you know, the powers that be. There was no stopping them. And so I think, and because I mean, I cannot state how much, especially in cities, in northern cities and in London, the presence of, well, I also, where I live in the Shires, I mean, I went past a lovely English cottage, and this wanker was flying a Palestine flag out of it, you know. And so that conflict is not just an ethnic, you know, is a religious thing. There's also, you know, international leftism and solidarity, neo-colonialist arguments as well. So there's a lot of, you know, people who have this vested interest in it. Whether that's a good or bad thing, it's up to you, but is a vested interest in it. And I think, you know, there's that idea of, well, why is it this group can get away with having, um able to attack, um and now I can't listen. you can probably understand where I'm coming from. That there is like this, there is this two-tier aspect, as we pointed out, in that it exists in society. Sorry, I can't, because of how hot the situation is. I just can't. Um, I can't go there. But yeah, that's how I perceive it. You know, I also think stuff like the grooming gangs, the corruption with local. I mean, if you look at some of the grooming gang reports, the collaborated with. It wasn't just like police turning a blind eye or Labour councillors turning a blind eye. Like they were involved. Like in many cases, they were actually involved. Like girls were picked up at police stations by these groomers, and the police sort of gave them a thumbs up. So the hatred that you're seeing at the police and everything, there it isn't just, I don't think it's so random. I think there is. Now, of course, I don't agree with violence. I'm a pacifist, as all of you know, and I strongly condemn any acts of violence against police officers or members of the public or damage. But I think, that is what a lot of people were angry about, and I think if you know a sensible response from a government would be to go up there, listen to their anger. I think that a lot of that would be. I think a lot of them, especially the working class, probably can't articulate it in that sort of way. But that is sort of the general mood that you would get, and it doesn't help when what's recently has happened is that um you've got mobs of Muslims attacking people in Sheffield and Burnley and Birmingham Yardley, in pubs, in streets, storing weapons in mosques, according to a police liaison officer. Whether that's true or not, I don't. That's what the police officer said on camera. So don't come at me for spreading misinformation. That's what the police officer said. But um, it all it does is it reinforces that perception of reality. And the question is, there is, they are able to control the media, and there's that question: is this being done deliberately to buy the powers that be in this country? I can see an argument that it is. Can definitely see it, but I don't know. Um, all I can say is for our side, I don't think in the long run, short term and long run, I don't think anything will be good. That's just me. Um, Aaron Hook, I agree that it's always been there. It's just that from 97 till 26, public expression of it were suppressed. However, since 2016, that suppression doesn't work anymore. Yeah, and one thing that I noted, Starmer is, and many Labour MPs, because Yvette Cooper and her husband Ed Balls, who obviously part of the system as a journalist now, on Good Morning Britain, came up through the ranks and was politically awakened and worked within Britain of '97. Yeah, and in the start of emerging New Labour Britain, and many of those people in Labour today worked and around in that time, and in the media, and they still believe that Britain of '97 is the Britain of 2024, and it just isn't. I mean, the people. I mean, the number one, the people aren't as contained as '97 as they are today, and that is why I think Starmer has miscalculated. And also, he was a barrister. He was the head of CPS, and if you know anything about CPS, that's Crown Prosecution Service. Um, they operate in a way where there is like no compromise. The way that he ran his department was a no compromise. We're doing it my way, this way. And while um, yeah, Aaron Hook said, well, this is my point. I was going, well, this is why I'm giving the two sides here, because I can see the argument that there is some malice, but there's also that because he was running CPS, that he runs it like a government department, and he runs it effectively like a bit of a, totalitarian in a sense, and doesn't really care to listen for outside critique, because the government department, especially CPS, get that sort of level of protection. They can just hide behind um, press gagging orders and all that sort of stuff. But he can't run it like that, and he can't run the government like that. And so what you're seeing is this total collapse in, you know, authority on his part. And that's where you have the competency crisis playing. Um, I need to see now. I know there's something planned for tomorrow, and I'm going to say it here. If you're in the UK, don't don't attend any of these protests or what have you. Don't attend them, um, especially the one tomorrow, because if it is going ahead, I don't know. But if it is going ahead, I wouldn't attend them. It's if it is orchestrated, you know, by malicious government actors, then why risk it? If it isn't, and it's just like orchestrated by foreign actors, as like TR and other people, again, don't risk it, because why ruin your life on because you chucked a few bottles or stones at a police officer? It won't change anything. It just fundamentally will not change anything. People already know how how angry people are in this country now. The public understand that message, but the problem that you got now is the elite have got into their mind through the hypernormalization process that people who are protesting are now potential terrorists. And the rhetoric we saw with the Jan 6, remember the whole, and even to this day, Jan 6 people, they're insurrectionists, which of course is ridiculous statement in on itself. But, again, they will rationalize that into their silly, warped worldview. And the same will happen, tomorrow. So I mean, Aaron Hook, I will give you an answer. If it kicks, if things happen tomorrow, I can give you an answer whether or not if it's planned or if it's just incompetency. I would say, if I was to do a guess, I would say I'd agree with you on this. I'd say I don't give them credit. I think it is genuine incompetency. I don't think they have a genuine pulse of the nation. They probably went in to protect their client group, but the problem is because there are video footage and everything, they film themselves attacking people in the street, attacking pubs with children and women and children in it. I mean, Jess Phillips was playing, defense for the same people who she said made her terrified while campaigning. I mean, you cannot make this shit up. The Sky News presenter who felt threatened and had to run. I mean, they do know. They do know. They know. But, you know, they dare not go into those places because, they're cowards, or cowardly. And most people are cowardly. I mean, I hate to tell you people this again, but most people are cowards. The masses are cowardly. They'd rather have a easy and simple life, not rock the apple cart. And that's fine. That's fair enough. You can't have a nation of radical, um, you know, radical-minded individuals going around causing trouble. You know, and if we had a system of government where rioting happened, we wouldn't tolerate it. You can't have people going around burning, smashing up things, and it isn't acceptable. in that sense. Overall, it's not acceptable. But you know, the more that they allow these Muslim people, you know, these Muslim radicals on the street to commit crime, to collaborate with the police, with you know, impunity, and dipshit former Labour MPs who go on GB News and say, well, it's non-comparable, you can't compare it, as a defence, that crime can only be measured on the scale of it, you know. Oh, well, this guy only murdered one person, and compared to this guy who murdered 10, you know, it's one person. It's only one person. Think of the scale of it. Fucking retard. I mean, he looked like a worm as well. Let me just find it. I want people to see what an absolute piece of filth this guy is. He looks like a fucking scumbag who would knife you in the back the first chance he gets. Yeah, the videos of attacks were pretty disgusting, you know, and a lot of those people who were rioting, English people rioting, would have seen those clips. And do you think that, you know, do you think that would further their resolve, or, you know, discourage them? It probably made them very angry, you know, and it's been handled so badly. You know, the police should have arrested them, you know, on the outset. It was ridiculous. Let's see. Let's find this clip of Connor. Sion Simon. Yeah, that's the name of the rodent who was on GB News. I might just play this clip so everyone can see what an absolute fucking worm this guy is. Absolute piece of shit.
I think it's inadvisable for anyone to go to these protests, first of all, because even if you're going down to show that you are mourning the loss of the Southport's victims, or you have objections to immigration, as I do, you are probably going to be swept up in violence committed by other people, which you should not commit, and you will probably be arrested. So I'm going to say to people, even though feelings are high, it is very unwise to go down there no matter what you hear. But I think the important point is being made before the break that the police have, in other instances and in this, had a stronger presence at the English side of the riots than the Muslim side of the riots.
Well, you cannot say English because a lot of people are Muslim. They're also English.
No, as in like the English flag.
What a stupid comment to make. And this is my point. You know, people have just brought up, even older ones have been, you know, and this is a recently modern thing that, oh no, we touched magic soil, we're a propositional nation. Get the fuck out of there with that crap.
Flag waving ethnically English side of the riots, because there's not a large Muslim presence at the main demonstration since the Southport riots, is there? I think that's a fair distinction to make. And the point being, there have been prior events, and this has been raised by other guests on your show, particularly yesterday, like the Black Lives Matter riots, where in America, there was a parallel demonstration in England where there was criminal damage committed, and the Met gave their officers the go-ahead to take the knee. There was the Palestine protests every weekend and Wednesday since October the 7th, not since Israel's retaliation, mind you, who shot fireworks at police horses, who projected from the river to the sea on the Elizabeth Tower while Parliament was in session, who were intimidating MPs, and they got a lot lighter of a touch. So all I'm asking is the standards be applied fairly, and we don't have massive ethnic gangs fighting in British streets.
It's not legitimate to distinguish between Muslims and English. Like, it's not legitimate to say ethnic English versus Muslims. Like, we don't talk like that in this country anymore.
What do you mean you don't talk like that in this country?
We, the rest of the country, the mainstream, the normal Britain, proper Britain, we don't talk like that. We don't think like that. And it's you that's got...
Like what?
Like that.
No, like what are you insinuating?
I'm not insinuating. I'm saying it really clearly straight to your face.
You're not.
Yes, I am.
Say it.
Ethnic English versus Muslim. We don't talk like that in this country anymore unless we are racists.
It's possible to be not ethnically English and born in Britain. Like, that's not a controversial statement whatsoever.
What's ethnically English mean?
As in your grandparents and your parents, and they're from Anglo-Saxons. Like, but I'm not associating any morality with that. I'm just saying there are two groups here. One group is flying the English flag. One flag is the Palestine flag. Like, they're not, that group that's flying the Palestine flag, that are saying Allahu Akbar and the like, they're not protesting on behalf of England as the other protesters say they are. That's the only...
Shouldn't debate the... I mean, 100% yes. And you shouldn't debate this fucker on the right. You know, this hatchling approach of not knowing what an English person is. What's an Arab? What is an Arab? I mean, Arabia. With all the Egyptians, they're not Arabs. What the fuck is this? You're not an Israelite. You're not ethnically Jewish. You're not from Israel. I mean, what the fuck is this argument? Of course, he knows what an English person is. And this is kind of mental because in some way he's actually, hyper-normalized his way round to actually not knowing what English person is, because we're all English. It's not just Anglo. The Romans, the Greeks, the Normans. All these millions of Normans that came over, and it's absolutely fucking dog wank. It really is. This sort of smug 90s New Labour fanny packer that has who is, I mean, he was an MP for Birmingham. So if you live in Birmingham, this is the face of a man who fucked up your city. Just to let you know, this is actually a story of Wormtongue, actually governed Edoras to the point where it was all like populated by orcs. This is like the bad ending. This is the bad ending of the Shire. When the ruffians take over and turn it into some hellscape. Yeah, this is it. It's like, oh, what is English? I've never seen an English person. Oh, there is no English culture. Oh, those old videos and photos from 100 years ago. Oh no, that's just reactionary propaganda. Fucking retard. Apparently, looking on his personal life, apparently he was a bit of a scumbag anyway. Apparently pretended to be Cameron. He offered up viewers on one of his children the opportunity to sleep with his wife. He's a degenerate, but what annoys me is that a lot of, well, I always believe that people, if people who push for something should have to, well, I can't say it. I can't say it. Yeah. I mean, he looks a mess, just like, probably like go home and watch his girlfriend get gangbanged by 50 blacks or something. What an absolute fucking piece of shit vermin this guy is. Just like, I never understood. I am, and I never understood even, and I will be honest. I came from, not, I came from, went to pretty nice schooling around a lot of these people, and a lot of these people's mindset, and I think they've become, either I'm, whether I'm more people are more consciously awakened to all this, or that we're just more, they've become more insufferable wankers in recent years. But I don't believe, though. I actually believe this guy, this worm, believes 100% what he's saying. He believes it. He honestly believes that we're in the the Tower of Babel civilization, and that England's never existed. Maybe all that, all that pounding New Labour gave to him has completely traumatized his warped, fucked up little mind, that he can't remember the life before 97. Maybe that's what it is. Anyway, let's just listen to the end of this this brain rot. See
The
what
distinction I make.
Those hooligans in balaclavas throwing fire bombs at mosques and putting British policemen in hospital. Those people, they don't stand for England.
Hang on, I'm not saying they're standing for England. I'm saying they are English people.
Well, none of them are Irish then by heritage, or Scottish.
Well, they might well be, but I'm saying
so why do you call them English?
Because the predominance of the protests are.
Again, this is England. These English cities. I honestly, this is the thing, is where I don't even understand. I mean, I'd like a Labour person or some Liberal to come on and just explain to me, like, what is the new canon narrative here? Because I mean, in previous years, I was able to understand. Oh yeah, anyone who comes to this country touches the magical soil is this. Henceforth, this and this is always been this way. I don't even understand what he is trying to say now. He acknowledges that there is English people, then there is Scottish people, then Irish people, but doesn't. I mean, this is the thing. I don't even understand what his and I don't think Connor really understands what his what his framing of it is. I don't think he understands. I think he's just I don't think he understands. It's just pure gig man, incompetent managerial. Well, it's not even managerial, just lefty. Gets his bit of cultural slop at the end of the day. Goes to Curry House, feels good about it. Goes to a local workshop function of how to belittle what the burning embers left of the civilization. What an absolute parasite. Anyway,
waving the English flag, and by their accents in the video, they sound English. Why is this a contention? I'm just saying there's one side here and one side there, and I don't want massive ethnic fights.
Reasonable, yeah. Reasonable summary there. They're English because they have English accent. I mean, they were chanting Yorkshire, for fuck's sake. Oh yeah, they could be Irish, they could be Scots. I mean, absolutely mental case. And I know people say, well, hold on, that AI, this is he's like a bit of a far lefty. No, this is the prevailing worldview in mainstream politics across all parties, even the Conservative Party. This is the mainstream prevailing view. Funny thing is, I think it was in 2010 they changed the definition of nationality, so they effectively did abolish the concept of an English person and everything. That actually nationality, it just comes down to it's just a paper, Sorry, no, sorry, Anglo-Saxon Wessex. No, sorry. Did Alfred the Great have a paper proving he was Anglo-Saxon? Well, no, then he isn't. Fedora hat tip. Maybe they will just drown and like just become a nervous wreck in their own homes because they are their minds become so muddled with liberal bullshit. One can dream. The UK have the UK have been betrayed by their own government. Yeah, been like that for a while, I'm afraid. I knew he was a retard, but him saying that did surprise me. I thought even though he sounded moronic saying it. Yeah, no, he didn't. He didn't. No, we're all the morons because we don't think. What was it? We don't think like that anymore. We don't think that anymore. Hold on a sec. I think there was there a follow on from this? Maybe not. That's all right. We'll leave it like that for the minute. Well, so yeah. I mean, the interesting thing with the late stage Soviet Union is people became, one of the things is you didn't have a civilization or culture to attach onto. The Tsarist, what became before, was not in the picture. Everyone was kind of a nihilistic, spiritual atheist. Perestroika brought the start of American slop. I do wonder if there were people in the West who only knew about Gorbachev because he was the guy in the Pizza Hut ads. That'd be funny. It's like, wait, you're the you're the premier of the Soviet Union. I thought you were just like some guy in the Pizza Hut in Russia. So yeah, I do wonder if there's going to because how incompetent that Starmer is getting, if he's going to have like his own Ceausescu moment, when he's on the balcony and it gets to the point where everyone sort of turns on him and he has like this the total authority collapse. No, of course not. I'm not saying there should be what followed, but the same sort of thing. This can he quite he isn't he's got no charisma. He he was thin ice on that anyway because he had no charisma. He had no personality. He didn't really have much of a mandate. The only thing that he had was that incompetent Tories wiped out because most of their voter base either stayed home or voted reform. I mean, that's the one thing he had going for him. I mean, even the ethnic voting bloc, who Labour rely on, were kind of in some places voted for people from their own groups and communities, states within states. Where does this end, chat? Where does this end? Tell you where it ends. Ends with all of us in the gulag. where it all ends. I'm sorry. Anyone translate? Gente ne paso por like a subversive? I'm sorry, Rosaline Castro. You're going to have to. I don't speak. Was that Spanish or Portuguese? I don't know what you're saying. You could be saying something rather insightful. You could be being really offensive to all of us at the moment. I don't know. It's odd you sent that. Like I can speak Spanish or Portuguese. Like, what gave you that idea? Well, if you get any translation, find it funny that when the mosque is attacked all over the news, yet 100 churches throughout Europe being set on fire, destroyed or turned into mosques. Yeah. If Jess Phillips is forced to resign for what she says, Starmer more likely to be moved into internal coup. Yeah, I mean their position is untenable at this point. They've openly, publicly, in front of the media as well, just straight up gave a green light to crime. Okay, you can't like the stream. You said she's subscribing and it's Portuguese. Thank you. Subscribe. Oh, thank you for subscribing. I guess I am targeted. Well, thank you for Portuguese. I mean, I didn't. That's one constituent I wasn't expecting. A Portuguese contingent. Thank you. Are you Portuguese or Brazilian? Actually, that's my. Actually, let's confirm that. Is this Portugal, Brazil? We're talking about here. Got Oinker, who's been on my Twitter and this space for a while, around my channels, from Brazil. Oh, you're Spanish. Oh, well, welcome. Lisa and Peter just subscribed. Well, thank you for subscribing. I mean, that was one thing, as you were talking about on Iron Duke's channel a week ago. We were saying, what this is before everything kicked off. How far does Britain have to go for total breakdown? And it's quite funny because this happened a week before it all happened, and I like to sort of remind or use the example of the Spanish Civil War or the events leading up to that. And what happened was effectively the left wing cheated, rigged an election, and became, you had bands of murderous Marxists going around murdering nuns, priests, and just ordinary Spanish people. And it got to the point where the patriotic Spanish faction had to adapt, and they did. Apostolic Majesty did a great stream with AA on the Spanish Civil War, about the realities of it. And also I think there was a book, I can't remember the book now, but there was like from a, because the trouble is a lot of the content, of the Spanish Civil War is from the Republican side, the evil reactionaries who wiped out the Basques, the evil fifth column. So yeah, I think that's the Spanish Civil War is a good one to look at, because that one was quite ideological. I mean, the bands of anarchists, anarchists in government. I always thought that was quite funny, to be honest. Yeah, Zuma Historian also did a good video on the Spanish Civil War as well. More content. It'd be great if he did one on the factions, the nationalist factions in the Spanish Civil War as well. What was it, the Phalangists, and Rosalina Castro, she's Portuguese. Well, welcome. Always with English patriots. Yeah, one of the things about biscuit tin nationalism in England is this kind of, well, you're meant to have like this hatred for the French, and I get it, because historically speaking, we've always had this and usually a lot of the biscuit tin nationalists, it would be sort of like 1066 and kind of like medieval France, which is at this point, I mean, it's so far from from anything tangible or real now. I do think that the modern hatred idea of the French comes from pain and the result of the French Revolution. Again, a sort of more ideological, radicalism against sensible classical liberalism, or something like that. Not that it wasn't unwarranted, because I think the French Revolution was genuinely a batshit crazy series of events, and Thomas Carlyle's book on the French Revolution is a good one. I've also got one here on there was one on the rise of Napoleon. As well. Aaron Hook says the Lebanese civil war is another good topic to study. Yeah. I mean, you can look at many of it. It's not so much like down to a front line like civil wars like America or anything. It would sort of be, you look at a study of again, breakdown in governance. I mean, I'd also the Balkanization of the Balkans, of Yugoslavia. What was different about that, though, is it was states breaking away within states. And of course, Yugoslavia was dominated politically and militarily by the Serbian ethnic group, which is why it was difficult for the Croats and others, because they didn't, the Serbs had the military power to do so. Same with the Bosnians. But yeah. Yeah, imagine that on like imagine that on national TV, like in the end stages of Yugoslavia, like that lefty, the Simon says, he's like the Yugoslav equivalent. He goes, what is a Croat? What is a Serb? What's a Bosnian? What do you mean they sound Bosnian? It's like, I can actually imagine that argument being used, because you did have, if you look at demographic breakdowns of late stage Yugoslavia, you did have this subgroup of people, again mainly within Serb, maybe mixed marriages or something, because it did happen between, like, say, Serbs and Bosnians or something like that. Others, you did have those that identified as Yugoslavians. Free UK. There's a lot of people, a lot of patriotic people sort of subscribing, so welcome. And if, yeah, for those new, don't sit this protest out tomorrow. Don't go. Cause I don't think anything good. I mean, I don't think anything comes of protest, to be honest. Nothing really comes of it. And definitely don't take any inspiration from what we've been discussing. I would say actually let this government collapse in on its own bullshit naturally. Like that Muppet on GB News we were watching a second ago. Let him collapse on it in it, and sort of his side fall on their own weak arguments. Ride the tiger out, just chill out. Go for a walk, read a book, something like that. Watch Adam Curtis documentary on hypernormalisation. And you too can maybe learn a bit how public relations work in the modern world with government and corporations and media marketing. So I'm not going to say you'll be immune from it. I don't think anyone can be, really, unless you're a complete, socially, inept or awkward person like myself who doesn't talk to people out, in the real world. But hey, I think we'll probably call it a night in a minute. But yeah, I mean, we've I think on the final point of hypernormalisation, when it comes to Britain, we've sort of gone over a couple points here, and I think one of the final things I was going to mention is that it's what is good, and I always say is good, is creating on opposing sides rival discussions, rival narratives, because if there was to be this incompetent class was to collapse under their own weight, there'll be others there to pick up and lead the discussion, lead the narrative. And Starmer's lost the control of the narrative, and so like we're seeing with two-tier care, for example, that's something that's come out as one of the only positives, to be honest, from all this. So it sort of set the line in public consciousness. So be part of that. Start creating different narratives. Start get involved locally with local politics. I know there was a riot that one that targeted a library which had degenerate content in it. As I say, on the local level, if you work to get rid of harmful content through a legal and safe and just route, which makes sure it can never return, because if you burn it down, it'll just be rebuilt again. As I say, violence, it doesn't work like that. And also, fundamentally, people like Farage, and this is something even within not just left wing, but when you have right wing movements, the radicals in right wing movements also get get the boot as well, get the shut out from, because you can't run you can't build a society on that, you know. This one of our Spanish guests says, do you think a race civil war can actually happen? No, I don't think so. I don't really want it to happen. I think if there was a civil war, I think it would be more, well, it'd be framed as more ideological. You know, it basically, it'd be current ruling elite against what they would describe as fascists. I don't want that to happen. I don't think an infrastructure is there for that to even happen. It'd be a disaster if it did happen. I mean, as I say, I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. So yeah, as I say, no, I don't want any sort of race or any other civil war. It would be bad for everybody. So yeah. Anyway, okay then, massive deportations would be possible. Well, again, you know, we live in febrile times in the UK. All I can say is during 2020 lockdown, the government was able overnight to control the movements of 66 million people in the UK, which is the entire population. So that's sort of your answer. I mean, yeah, put mind to it. Yeah, anything can be done in that regard. See, yeah, I mean, especially those. I mean, again, the idiot that we saw on GB News, he said, "Why is it the prisons are full of, a high number of foreigners?" Well, where I live, you have a gang from Bulgaria and Turkey that were running human trafficking. Send them out. You could free up the prisons quite easily with the foreigners. If they're criminals, you kick them out the country. But so yeah, it'd be possible. But again, I don't think on an international level. I mean, I think if there was ever a regime that came into Britain that tried that, it'd be treated as a pariah state. And I think any other European country, if they tried to do that, I mean, Spain, your country, right? It was treated as a pariah after World War II because of the Franco government by many in the West, in America included. Well, didn't treat it as like a legitimate government, when it was legitimate government because that was the government of the day. But so who knows? I mean, I think in the long term, I don't think anything will. I think the only thing that will come of this is that it has shown that Labour is, that the adults back in the room isn't true. That's all that's really happened from this. And I also think on the hypernormalisation front that they're underway constructing new narratives to throw out there to preach, and it's going to be even more left wing and even more insufferable and even more idiotic. But there we go. Anyway, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night, and don't stay safe. Stay cool. Ride the tiger. and you know, we want peace. We don't want you know, don't do anything stupid. You know, you do something constructive. Don't do anything destructive. Good night, everyone.